The grandeur of Ethelberg had never failed to impress Ambassador Illyra Vance, even after 15 years of service. As the capital of the United Galactic Council, the sprawling cosmic metropolis represented the pinnacle of interspecies cooperation, at least in theory. Today, as she stood at the window of her diplomatic quarters, watching the dance of ships across the celestial cityscape, that grandeur felt hollow. The message from Earth had come 3 hours ago. Decisive. Final. 15 years of diplomacy had come to this moment. Ambassador? Her aide, a young diplomat named Maya Chun, stood at the doorway. The council is assembled. They're waiting. Illyra nodded, smoothing the formal diplomatic uniform of the Terran Federation. Then let's not keep them waiting any longer. The Great Hall of the UGC embodied 7 millennia of galactic governance. Massive pillars carved from the crystalline core of ancient stars supported a dome that simulated the view from the exact center of the galaxy. Below it, the circular table, carved from a single piece of millennium wood from the forests of Alderath, seated the representatives of 217 species. The human seats were positioned in the outer ring, a subtle reminder of Earth's relatively recent admission to the Council. 700 years was mere infancy compared to founding members like the Loriani, whose civilization had achieved interstellar travel when humans were still perfecting agriculture. High Commissioner Torvin occupied the central seat, his 4 eyes narrowing as Illyra entered with her delegation. The Valtraxian's scaled skin rippled with barely concealed contempt. Ambassador Vance, he intoned, voice amplified throughout the chamber. The Council recognizes the Terran Federation. We have been informed you have an announcement of some importance. Several seats away, Senator Marcus Thorne, Earth's senior representative, gave Illyra an imperceptible nod. His weathered face betrayed nothing, but she could see the steel in his eyes. The decision had been difficult for them both, but the Xylos massacre had left no alternative. Illyra approached the speaking platform, activating the universal translator as a formality, though most species present understood Standard Galactic. High Commissioner, esteemed delegates of the United Galactic Council, she began, her voice steady despite the weight of what was to come. For 7 centuries, humanity has stood among you as a member of this council. We have contributed our technology, our resources, our creativity, and our blood to the principles of galactic unity. A murmur ran through the assembly. This was not the expected apology for Earth's recent, aggressive posturing regarding the Outer Rim attacks. 3 months ago, the human colony of Xylos was attacked by forces identified as the KRYLL hegemony. 3,400,000 human lives were extinguished in a single day. The facts were known to all present, but stating them aloud brought a sudden stillness to the chamber. The Terran Federation came to this council seeking justice, protection, and decisive action against this threat. We presented evidence of KRYLL movements near 7 other human settlements. We requested a combined defense fleet. Her gaze swept across the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, or sensory appendages of those who had voted against Earth proposals. Instead, after weeks of debate, this council produced a resolution expressing deep concern and establishing a committee to investigate the incident. Illyra's voice hardened. While you deliberated, 2 more human outposts received warnings of imminent KRYLL attacks and were evacuated, not by UGC protection forces, but by our own fleet, acting alone. High Commissioner Torvin leaned forward. Ambassador Vance, if this is another attempt to circumvent the proper channels. It is not. High Commissioner, Illyra cut him off, breaking diplomatic protocol, which caused gasps among the more traditional delegates. This is notification. From within her formal robes, she withdrew a small data crystal and inserted it into the central console. The galaxy map above the table illuminated, highlighting Terran Federation territories in blue. By unanimous vote of the Earth Senate, as of this moment, the Terran Federation hereby withdraws from the United Galactic Council and all associated treaties, compacts, and mutual defense agreements. The chamber erupted in shock. Delegates rose from their seats, voices raised in dozens of languages despite the translator protocols. You cannot simply withdraw. Torvin thundered, his secondary vocal sacs inflating with agitation. There are procedures, transition periods, legal obligations, all of which are superseded by Article 17 of the Founding Charter, Senator Thorne interrupted, rising from his seat, which states that any member may withdraw immediately if they determine the Council has fundamentally failed to protect their sovereign interests or their citizens' lives. The 3 million dead of Xylos qualify, I believe. Alara continued as the uproar increased. The borders of Terran space are now closed to all UGC official vessels. Our diplomatic personnel are being recalled from all UGC worlds as I speak. Our trade agreements will honor existing contracts to completion but will not be renewed. Ambassador Xyler of the Loriani, one of the few council members who had supported Earth's defense requests, approached the human delegation. His luminescent skin pulsed with patterns of distress. "Alara, please," he said quietly, using her first name against protocol. "This is not the way. Working together from within the system." "We tried that approach, old friend," she replied, genuine regret in her voice. "For centuries, the system is broken." Above them, the galaxy map shifted. Terran ships were already moving, creating defensive formations around human space. Not an aggressive posture, but clearly a withdrawal from the UGC's mutual protection zones. "This is madness," said Torvin. "Humanity cannot stand alone against the KRYLL. You will be destroyed, and then they will come for others." Senator Thorne's laugh was sharp and without humor. "Your sudden concern for our safety is touching, High Commissioner. Perhaps you should have demonstrated it when we first brought evidence of KRYLL movements near our colonies. The Terran Federation wishes the United Galactic Council no ill," Alara concluded. "But we can no longer entrust our security or our future to an institution that has repeatedly demonstrated it does not value human lives or concerns equally with others." With that, she stepped away from the platform. The human delegation rose as one and followed her toward the grand exit. The symbolism was lost on no one. The human seats at the great table would remain empty. As the doors closed behind them, the last thing Alara heard was Torvin's voice, stripped of its usual confidence. This is unprecedented." "No, High Commissioner," she whispered to herself. "This is just the beginning." Throughout Terran space, Operation Sovereign Sky was already in motion. "Withdrawal protocol complete at Proxima Station," reported the communications officer aboard the TFS Resilient, flagship of the Terran Defense Fleet. "Ambassador Keller and staff are aboard and outbound." Admiral Jianli nodded, watching the strategic display. Similar reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Earth's embassy on Centauri Prime, closed. Trade mission on Veltrax, evacuated. Research stations, diplomatic outposts, cultural exchanges, all withdrawing with precision. "Fleet status?" she asked. "Heimdall Squadron has established the defensive perimeter in Sector 7. Athena Group is redeploying from UGC joint bases. 74% of our forces will be in sovereign space within 26 hours. The Admiral studied the movements. Operation Sovereign Sky had been planned for years, a contingency that few believed would ever be implemented. The Terran Federation had always worked toward greater integration with the galactic community, not isolation. But the Xylos massacre had changed everything. "Message from President Thorne," the comm officer announced. The main view screen activated, showing the stern face of Marcus Thorne, newly elevated from senator to interim president following the emergency session of Earth government. "Admiral Lee," he said without preamble. "Status report. Proceeding exactly as planned, Mr. President. No resistance from UGC forces. Several official hails requesting clarification, but no interference with our withdrawals." Thorne nodded. "And Project Lumina?" Admiral Lee glanced at her second-in-command, who handed her a secure datapad. "Dr. Eris Thorne reports final testing is complete. The protocols are ready for implementation if needed." A flash of something, pride perhaps, crossed the president's face at the mention of his sister. Dr. Eris Thorne had been leading Earth's classified technological development program for decades, creating advances that the UGC's restrictive technology sharing agreements had forbidden humanity from pursuing. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," President Thorne said. "But the KRYLL won't wait long to test our resolve. They'll see our isolation as weakness." "The fleet is ready, sir." "It's not the fleet I'm worried about, Admiral." Thorne's expression darkened. "It's what happens next. The UGC has maintained stability for millennia. Our withdrawal creates a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so do power-hungry regimes. You believe others will follow our lead?" "I'm counting on it," Thorne replied. "But the transition won't be pretty. Keep our borders secure, but remember, we're not looking for a fight with former allies." "Understood, sir." As the communication ended, Admiral Lee returned her attention to the galaxy map. Already, UGC patrol routes were adjusting, avoiding Terran space. The separation was beginning. "Incoming transmission from a Loriani vessel," reported the comm officer. "It's not on any official channel." Lee raised an eyebrow. "Put it through to my ready room." Moments later, she found herself looking at the familiar features of Ambassador Zyler. The Loriani looked troubled, his skin patterns shifting in chaotic rhythms. "Admiral Lee," he said, "I hope I'm not compromising you with this unofficial contact." "Not at all, Ambassador. Though I believe diplomatic channels are now going through President Thorne's office." "This isn't diplomatic," Zyler said, his voice low. "This is a warning from a friend. The Council is in chaos. High Commissioner Torvin is already talking about economic sanctions against Earth." Lee snorted. "The UGC needs our technology more than we need their trade goods." "Perhaps. But there's more." The KRYLL hegemony sent an envoy to Ethelberg mere hours after your delegation departed. That gave Lee pause. The KRYLL were notoriously reclusive, their representatives rarely seen outside their own territory. What did they want? Officially? To discuss regional security concerns now that humanity has destabilized the quadrant. Zyler's skin flashed patterns of warning. Unofficially? They're testing for weakness, seeing which way the political winds are blowing. "Thank you for the information, Ambassador." Zyler's expression became even more troubled. "GN, the Lorians have been members of the Council since its founding. My people helped write the charter. But what Earth did today, I can't say was wrong. The admission clearly cost him." Lee nodded respectfully. "Difficult times reveal difficult truths, Ambassador." "Indeed. And I fear we are only at the beginning of difficult times." Zyler hesitated. "There are others in the Council who share my concerns. Not many yet, but enough to matter, perhaps. I'll pass that along to the President." After the transmission ended, Admiral Lee stood alone in her ready room, considering the implications. Humanity had expected isolation following their dramatic exit. But if Zyler was right, they might not be alone for long. That could be either very good or very dangerous, depending on who followed them out the door. 3 months passed with eerie silence from Terran space. In the chambers of the UGC, the empty human seats became a silent rebuke. Economic forecasts grew increasingly dire as the impacts of Earth's withdrawal rippled through galactic markets. Human technology, particularly their advanced computational systems and unique approach to bioadaptive materials, had become integral to countless industries. The abrupt cessation of technology transfers and joint research projects left many developments stalled. More concerning for the Council was the military vacuum. The Terran Defense Fleet had patrolled significant portions of the Outer Rim, areas now left vulnerable. When the Council attempted to reassign other member fleets to cover these regions, many cited resource constraints or internal security concerns. "This is unconscionable," High Commissioner Torvin declared during yet another emergency session. "The security of the Outer Rim is a collective responsibility. All members must contribute." Representative Maltok of the Vresh Confederacy rose from his seat. The insectoid diplomat's mandibles clicked in what those familiar with the species recognized as skepticism. "The Vresh have contributed our fair share to collective security for 2 millennia," he stated. Yet when the KRYLL attacked human colonies, this council found itself unable to act decisively. Now you ask us to extend our patrols to regions the humans previously covered, placing our ships at risk from the very same threat. The situations are not comparable, Torvin insisted. The attacks on human colonies, while regrettable, were isolated incidents requiring proper investigation before committing to military action. In a recent attack on the fair mining outpost, asked Ambassador Zyler, was that also an isolated incident? The chamber fell silent. 3 weeks earlier, a KRYL battle group had struck the Farron colony, nowhere near human space, but in a sector previously patrolled by Terran ships. The UGC response fleet had arrived too late to prevent significant casualties. The Council is addressing that situation through appropriate diplomatic channels, Torvin replied stiffly. Just as it addressed the Xylos massacre, Zyler's skin flushed with patterns indicating barely controlled anger. The humans warned us. They showed us evidence of KRYL movements. They begged for a unified response. We chose bureaucracy over action, procedure over protection. The Loriani delegation is out of order, Torvin declared, but his authority seemed to carry less weight than before. In the months since Earth's departure, subtle but significant shifts had occurred in Council dynamics. Species that had traditionally aligned with UGC leadership began asking uncomfortable questions. Delegations that had previously remained silent during debates now voiced concerns about defense policies and resource allocation. Most troubling for Torvin and his allies was the increasing frequency with which the human withdrawal was referenced as a precedent rather than an aberration. The United Galactic Council has maintained peace and stability for 7,000 years, Torvin reminded the Assembly. One member's rash action does not invalidate our legacy or our purpose. As the session ended without resolution, Ambassador Zyler found himself approached by Maltok of the Vresh. The insectoid diplomat's translator rendered his subtle, phenomenal communications into speech. The humans, Maltok began carefully. Have they communicated with the Loriani since their departure? Zyler hesitated. Official contact between UGC members and the Terran Federation had been discouraged by Torvin's administration. Not through formal channels, but through informal ones, perhaps. Maltok's compound eyes gleamed. The Vresh Confederacy finds itself reconsidering certain assumptions about galactic security. We would be interested in understanding humanity's current perspective. Before Zyler could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The central holographic display activated automatically, showing a tactical feed from the Galactic Core sector, the heart of UGC space. Attention all delegates, announced the security chief. We have confirmed reports of a major KRYL incursion in the Antares system. UGC Defense Fleet is responding. This belief rippled through the chamber. The Antares system was no isolated outpost. It was a core world, home to over 12 billion citizens and a major financial center. A KRYL attack that was unprecedented. This is impossible, Torvin whispered, his scales paling. The core is protected by our strongest defenses. The tactical display updated, showing UGC vessels engaging KRYL ships. The battle was not going well. KRYL vessels maneuvered with unexpected precision, their weapons seemingly more advanced than previous intelligence had suggested. They've been holding back, Maltok observed, mandibles clicking rapidly. All these attacks on the periphery, they were testing defenses, gathering data. This is their true capability. As the Council watched in horror, the UGC flagship Eternal Justice exploded under concentrated KRYL fire. 3 more capital ships followed within minutes. Emergency protocols are now in effect, announced the security chief. All delegates are advised to prepare for possible evacuation of Ethelberg. The unthinkable had happened. For the first time in 7 millennia, the heart of galactic civilization was under direct threat, and humanity, with its significant military capability, was nowhere to be found. The KRYL have broken through the 3rd defensive line, reported the tactical officer aboard the Eternal Vigilance, the hastily appointed new UGC flagship. Antares Central is being evacuated, but civilian casualties are already in the millions. Fleet Commander Vrax, a veteran Farron officer with centuries of experience, struggled to comprehend the scale of the disaster unfolding. The KRYL attack force had appeared from nowhere, using previously unknown jump technology to bypass early warning systems. "Where are the Centaurian reinforcements?" he demanded. "The Centaurian Council has declined to commit their reserve fleet, Commander. They're holding position to defend their home systems." Vrax swore in his native tongue. The fragmentation was spreading. In the face of a genuine existential threat, the vaunted unity of the UGC was crumbling. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "High Commissioner Torvin is requesting an emergency channel from Ethelberg." The holographic projection of Torvin appeared, looking more disheveled than Vrax had ever seen the usually composed Valtraxian. "Commander, you must hold the Antares line at all costs," Torvin ordered. "If the system falls—" "With respect, High Commissioner, we are already losing Antares," Vrax replied. "My priority must be saving as many civilian lives as possible and preventing the KRYL from pushing deeper into the core. The Council is preparing a diplomatic initiative. The time for diplomacy has passed." Vrax rarely raised his voice to political leadership, but the situation had become untenable. The KRYL have made their intentions clear. They're not here to negotiate. They're here to conquer. Torvin's scales rippled with agitation. "Then what do you suggest, Commander?" Vrax took a deep breath before uttering words he never thought would pass his lips. "We need the humans." "Absolutely not," Torvin hissed. "The Terran Federation abandoned this council. We will not beg for their assistance now. 3 billion lives are at stake in the Antares system alone, Commissioner. If the KRYL push past us, trillions more will be at risk. The Terran Defense Fleet has significant combat capability that we desperately need. And what makes you think they would help us?" They made their position clear when they walked away. Vrax fixed the politician with a steady gaze. "Because whatever else they may be, humans have never stood by while innocents are slaughtered. Not when they have the power to intervene." After a moment of tense silence, Torvin's shoulders slumped. "Very well. Make the request. But I warn you, they will extract a terrible price for their aid." When the transmission ended, Vrax turned to his communications officer. "Send a priority message to Terran Command. Maximum encryption. Include all battle data from Antares." "Sir," the young officer hesitated, "what exactly should I request?" Commander Vrax looked at the tactical display, where KRYL ships continued their relentless advance. "Tell them the truth. Tell them we were wrong. And tell them that if they don't help us, there might not be a galaxy left for any of us." In her private office in the newly established Terran Sovereignty Command in Geneva, President Marcus Thorne's sister worked tirelessly. Dr. Eris Thorne had foregone sleep for the third consecutive night, driven by both scientific passion and a growing sense of urgency. The holographic schematics floating before her represented the culmination of decades of research, work that would have been impossible under UGC technology restrictions. Project Lumina wasn't merely an advance in weapons technology. It represented a fundamental shift in humanity's understanding of subspace physics. A soft chime interrupted her concentration. "Dr. Thorne," came her assistant's voice, "Admiral Lee has requested your immediate presence in the war room." Priority Alpha. Eris quickly secured her workstation and made her way through the underground complex. The Sovereignty Command had been built beneath the old United Nations headquarters, a deliberate symbolic choice reflecting humanity's new isolation. The war room was already filled with Earth's highest military and political leadership when she arrived. Her brother stood at the center, his face grave. "Eris," Marcus nodded. "Thank you for coming quickly. What's happened?" In response, Marcus gestured to the main tactical display. It showed the Antares system deep in UGC space, under massive assault from KRYL forces. "The core worlds are under attack," Admiral Lee explained. "The UGC defense fleet is being decimated." Commander Vrax of the Fair Navy has sent us a direct request for assistance. Eris studied the tactical data with a scientist's precision. The KRYL ships are using quantum phase technology, she observed. Similar to what we've been developing in Project Lumina, but cruder, more brute force. That's how they're bypassing the UGC early warning systems. Can we counter it? Marcus asked. We could do better than counter it, Eris replied. We can exploit it. Their approach creates quantum entanglement vulnerabilities that Lumina can target. A heavy silence fell over the room. Everyone present understood what deploying Project Lumina would mean, revealing technological capabilities that humanity had hidden from the galaxy for decades. We've received requests for aid from 17 individual UGC member species, said the Foreign Secretary. Not just from a UGC central authority, but from planetary governments directly. Some are offering significant concessions in exchange for protection. The KRYL have overplayed their hand, Marcus observed. They expected the fragmentation of the UGC to continue gradually after our withdrawal. This massive assault has accelerated the process, but also created potential for a different kind of unity. What are you suggesting, Mr. President? Asked Admiral Lee. Marcus walked slowly around the tactical display, studying the movements of ships throughout UGC space. 3 months ago, we walked away from a table where humanity was never truly respected or protected. Now, we have an opportunity to build a new table, one where all who sit at it do so as equals. He turned to face the assembled leadership. Prepare the Charter of Free Worlds for distribution, and ready the fleet for immediate deployment to Antares. The charter hasn't been finalized, the Foreign Secretary objected. The articles on mutual defense and technology sharing are still being debated. Then finalize them, Marcus ordered. Circumstances have changed. We're no longer operating on our preferred timeline. He turned to his sister. Eris, is Lumina ready for field deployment? She nodded. The primary systems are ready. We'll need to outfit at least 3 capital ships to create the necessary triangulation effect. Make it happen. Marcus addressed the entire room. Let me be clear, this is not about rescuing the UGC. That institution has demonstrated its fundamental flaws. This is about offering an alternative to those worlds who recognize those flaws but need protection during transition. Admiral Lee stepped forward. Sir, deploying to Antares means directly engaging the KRYL. We'll be at war. We've been at war since Xylos. Admiral, Marcus replied quietly. The only difference is that now everyone else is too. The battle for Antares had reached its desperate final phase when the sensors aboard Commander Vrax's flagship detected new jump signatures forming at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace, reported his tactical officer, voice tight with exhaustion. Configuration unknown. Vrax braced himself. If these were KRYL reinforcements, the battle, and likely the war, was lost. The ships that materialized were sleek, their hulls bearing the unmistakable insignia of the Terran Defense Fleet. But they looked different from the human vessels Vrax remembered, more advanced somehow, with unfamiliar configurations. Sir, we're being hailed by the human flagship. On the view screen appeared Admiral Jian Li, her uniform also subtly different from the UGC standard that Terran officers had once worn. Commander Vrax, she said, the Terran Federation acknowledges your request for assistance. We are engaging the KRYL forces now. Please withdraw your remaining ships to the designated coordinates we're transmitting. We cannot guarantee their safety otherwise. Before Vrax could question this unusual instruction, the human vessels began to move. Rather than forming conventional combat formations, they arranged themselves in a precise triangular pattern. What are they doing? His executive officer wondered. The answer came moments later. The 3 lead Terran ships simultaneously emitted what appeared to be directed energy beams, but unlike any weapon Vrax had ever witnessed. The beams didn't strike the KRYL vessels directly. Instead, they intersected in space, creating a strange distortion field. Every KRYL ship caught within that field simply stopped. Their energy signatures fluctuated wildly, then dimmed to minimal life support levels. By the first light, whispered Vrax. What technology is this? The human ships moved methodically through the Antares system, repeating the process in sector after sector. Within hours, the mighty KRYL assault force had been neutralized with minimal additional destruction. When it was over, Admiral Lee requested permission to board the Eternal Vigilance. Vrax granted it immediately. She arrived with a small delegation that included a civilian woman whose resemblance to the new human president was unmistakable. Commander Vrax, Lee began formally. Allow me to introduce Dr. Eris Thorne, Director of Advanced Technologies for the Terran Federation. The scientist nodded respectfully. Your people fought bravely, Commander. Not bravely enough, Vrax admitted. Without your intervention, Antares would have fallen completely. I must ask, what did your ships do to the KRYL vessels? We call it quantum phase disruption, Dr. Thorne explained. It exploits a vulnerability in the KRYL's own jump technology. In simple terms, it forces their ships into a state of quantum uncertainty, temporarily suspending normal operations. This technology, Vrax struggled to comprehend. The UGC has nothing like it. How long have humans possessed such capabilities? The theoretical work began decades ago, Eris replied carefully. But practical application was considered impossible under UGC technology restrictions. After our withdrawal, development accelerated. The implication was clear. Humanity had been holding back, constrained by the very institution that was meant to foster advancement. Admiral Lee produced a data crystal. Commander, we've brought something more important than our technology. A proposal. Vrax accepted the crystal cautiously. What kind of proposal? The Charter of Free Worlds, said Dr. Thorne. A framework for a new kind of interstellar cooperation. One based on genuine mutual defense, technological collaboration, and respect for sovereign interests. You're proposing an alternative to the UGC, Vrax realized. Lee nodded. We're proposing a choice. Earth withdrew from the Council because we could no longer accept an institution that failed to protect its members or address existential threats. Today has proven that our concerns were valid. The Charter is being presented to every world that has requested our assistance, added Dr. Thorne. Each will decide freely whether to join. There are no coercions, no historical hierarchies, only mutual commitments clearly defined. Vrax studied the humans carefully. And if the UGC itself wishes to negotiate with the UGC as an institution? No, Admiral Lee said firmly. That table has been abandoned. But with individual member worlds who wish to discuss transition? Always. After the humans departed, Vrax reviewed the charter in his private quarters. The document was remarkable in its clarity and ambition. Where the UGC charter had grown into thousands of pages of amendments and exceptions over millennia, this new proposal was concise, with principles rather than procedures at its core. Most striking was the Mutual Defense Article, which established clear, automatic responses to aggression against any signatory, the very protection that might have saved Xylos. His communications officer interrupted his reading. Sir, we're receiving reports from across UGC space. The Loriani Assembly has voted to withdraw from the Council and signed the Human Charter. The Vresh Confederacy is debating similar action. Even the Centaurians are calling for emergency sessions of their planetary council. The fragmentation that had begun with humanity's departure was accelerating. But perhaps, Vrax reflected, it wasn't fragmentation at all, but reformation. High Commissioner Torvin's office in Ethelberg had once symbolized the pinnacle of galactic authority. Now, as he stared out at the once bustling skyways of the capital, that authority seemed to be evaporating before his eyes. 8 major member species have now formally withdrawn from the Council, his aide reported. 37 others have suspended their participation pending institutional reforms. The Galactic Bank has frozen UGC operational accounts due to the uncertainty. And the KRYL? Torvin asked, not turning from the window. Contained for now. The human intervention at Antares seems to have forced them to reassess. They've pulled back to their recognized borders. Torvin's scales rippled with suppressed emotion. They knew, he said quietly. The humans knew what was coming. That's why they left when they did. Sir, not because of Xylos alone. That was the catalyst, yes. But they had intelligence about the KRYLL that we ignored. They saw that the Council could not or would not act decisively. So they prepared. He finally turned to face his aide. And now they offer protection to a galaxy that rejected their warnings. Masterful strategy. A priority communication chime interrupted them. The holographic projector activated to show President Marcus Thorne, the first direct contact from Earth's leadership since the withdrawal. High Commissioner, Thorne began without preamble. I trust you've been briefed on the situation at Antares. Torvin straightened, drawing on 7 decades of diplomatic experience to maintain his composure. President Thorne, the Council acknowledges the Terran Federation's assistance in that matter. Perhaps this presents an opportunity to discuss humanity's return to the UGC, with certain accommodations, of course. That won't be happening, Commissioner, Thorne interrupted. I'm contacting you as a courtesy to inform you of developments that will affect Ethelberg directly. He gestured, and the image expanded to show a star chart. As you can see, the signatories to the Charter of Free Worlds now include worlds representing over 40% of the former UGC's economic activity and military capacity. That percentage is growing hourly. This is a coordinated dismantling of an institution that has maintained peace for 7 millennia, Torvin protested. No, Commissioner. This is the natural consequence of that institution's failure to adapt to emerging threats. The UGC maintained a particular kind of peace, one that preserved hierarchies and prevented disruption, even when disruption was necessary. Thorne's expression softened slightly. I'm not contacting you to gloat, Torvin. I'm offering warning. Ethelberg has been the center of galactic governance for thousands of years. That era is ending. Many of your citizens have skills and perspectives that will be valuable in the transition. They deserve the opportunity to prepare. You expect riots? Chaos? Torvin asked. I expect change, Thorne replied. How chaotic it becomes depends on how it's managed. After the communication ended, Torvin stood in silence for several long minutes. Throughout his career, he had viewed humanity as a disruptive force in the carefully balanced galactic order. Too innovative, too assertive, too unwilling to accept their place in the established hierarchy. Now he understood what he had failed to see before. Those very qualities had allowed humans to recognize and respond to dangers that the ancient, ossified systems of the UGC could not. Prepare my shuttle, he told his aide. I wish to see Ethelberg from orbit one last time. 1 year after humanity's dramatic exit from the council chambers, a new gathering took place. New Geneva Space Station orbited Earth, its construction a marvel of engineering completed in mere months thanks to technologies no longer restricted by UGC protocols. Its central chamber housed a circular platform, with a table, not of ancient millennium wood, but of a transparent material that seemed to capture starlight within its structure. Around this table sat representatives of 37 species, with more arriving weekly as their worlds completed the ratification process for the Charter of Free Worlds. Unlike the UGC's hierarchical seating arrangements, this table had no inner or outer rings, no position of prominence. Ambassador Ilera Vance, now serving as Earth Secretary of Interstellar Cooperation, stood to address the assembly. 1 year ago, humanity walked away from a table where our voice was diminished and our people left unprotected, she began. Today, we gather at a new table, one built on principles of genuine equality, mutual defense, and shared advancement. She gestured to the viewport, where a joint fleet exercise was visible, ships from dozens of worlds training together, sharing tactics and technologies previously hoarded by individual species or restricted by UGC regulations. The KRYLL hegemony has retreated for now, but they will return. When they do, they will not find us divided and unprepared as before. They will find us united, not by ancient traditions or bureaucratic inertia, but by shared commitment to our collective security and prosperity. Ambassador Zyler of the Loriani, one of the first to sign the charter, raised his hand to speak. When Earth departed the UGC, many called it abandonment. They said humanity had turned its back on galactic civilization. His skin rippled with patterns indicating thoughtful reflection. I now understand that you weren't abandoning us. You were compelling us to confront uncomfortable truths, that our venerated institutions had calcified, that stability had become stagnation, that true security requires not just agreements but action. Across the chamber, Commander Vrax, now representing the Farron systems, nodded in agreement. The galaxy watched in dread as humanity abandoned the table, he said. We feared what would follow, but perhaps that dread was necessary, a catalyst for the change we could not otherwise embrace. Alara smiled, remembering her own fear on that day 1 year earlier, when she had delivered Earth's withdrawal. The old table served its purpose for 7,000 years, she acknowledged. But tables can become worn, uneven, unstable with time. When that happens, sometimes the only solution is to build anew. She looked around at the diverse representatives, some from ancient civilizations that had been part of the UGC since its founding, others from younger species experiencing genuine interstellar partnership for the first time. There are still empty chairs at our table, she noted. Many worlds remain uncertain, watching to see if this new alliance will endure or fracture when tested. The KRYLL observe from their borders, assessing our strength and resolve. Even on signatory worlds, there are those who look back to the old order with nostalgia. President Marcus Thorne, seated beside his sister, rose to join Alara. The challenges ahead are substantial, he acknowledged. Building trust between worlds that have sometimes been rivals for millennia. Developing joint defense systems that respect sovereign interests while providing collective security. Establishing technological collaboration without creating new dependencies. Dr. Eris Thorne added, and continuing to innovate, not just in technology, but in how we relate to one another as distinct species with shared interests. The discussion continued late into the Earth night, as representatives debated practical implementations of charter principles. Unlike the formal, procedural deliberations of the UGC, these exchanges were direct, sometimes heated, but consistently productive. When the session finally adjourned, Alara found herself at the viewport, gazing out at the stars. Admiral Lee joined her there. "Penny for your thoughts, Ambassador?" the Admiral asked. "I was remembering something Marcus said the day before I delivered our withdrawal," Alara replied. He said, "Sometimes you have to leave the table to change the conversation." Wise words. I wasn't convinced at the time. I feared we were abandoning our responsibilities to the wider galaxy. Lee nodded. And now, Alara watched as ships from a dozen worlds maneuvered in perfect coordination, their crews learning to work together in ways the UGC had never facilitated. Now I understand that true responsibility sometimes requires the courage to walk away from what isn't working, not as an end, but as the beginning of something better. In the distance, a new delegation arrived, representatives from a world that had been among the most skeptical of Earth's motives. They had come to observe, not yet to join, but they had come. The galaxy that had watched in dread as humanity abandoned the table now watched with cautious hope as a new kind of table took shape, one with room for all who wished to sit as equals. The old order was passing, and though the future remained uncertain, for the first time in generations, it seemed to hold genuine possibility. Somewhere in the vast darkness beyond, the KRYLL were surely planning their next move. But they would face not the fractured, hesitant response of the UGC, but a new alliance forged in the recognition of shared vulnerability and common purpose. Humanity had walked away from one table, but in doing so, they had begun building another, stronger, fairer, and ready to face whatever challenges the universe might bring.